time probably, and I'll I'll be very nice.
Okay. Um, I did a poll at the beginning of this unit. I love poetry. This is always my favorite thing to teach during the year. Um,
Oh,
so I always really get excited about teaching it. But then I do a poll at the beginning. I ask the students, like, what do you think about poetry? And then my heart sinks because everyone, most students absolutely hate it. Because
yeah.
Morning, afternoon, Mr. Wick.
hi, Michael. How are you? Because
Uh,
I think they think that poetry has this. People think it's difficult, right? A lot of students think that uses a lot of figurative language, and they're afraid of like trying to understand it. I think so. Maybe that's something we can also talk about during the meeting. Gage, you're having microphone trouble. I'm sorry to hear that. So it's nice. We got a lot of students here, like 15. That's good. But we will wait. There are just a couple more people coming in. I hope it's because we have a poet here, not because they're looking for extra credit. But we'll see.
Wait, there is. I'm stupid, guys. No,
All right, if someone can just mute their microphone. Yeah, maybe I'll just mute everybody. Okay, until we get started. So if you just arrived, we're very lucky today. We have Mr. Summerfield. Apparently that's not his real name, that's his pen name, who is a poet, and he's talking to us from Tennessee, which is, I guess not the South, right? The South of the country. And he's actually the grandfather of one of our students, Mr. Cranford, Gage. And he's going to talk to us today a little bit about poetry, how he got into poetry, the kind of poetry he likes, the kind of poetry he writes. And if you have any questions, you can write it in the chat, or you can just unmute yourself. I'll unmute people now, and you can just ask him yourself. So maybe we'll just start with Mr. Summerfield. Maybe can just tell us a little bit about how he got into poetry, maybe when he got into poetry. I know a lot of kids already like poetry, some of my students, and the kind of poetry he writes. So yeah, when you're ready, Mr. Summerfield. Do I have unmuted you? Hold on, sorry.
There we go.
Oh, there you go.
How's that? Yeah.
Good. Thank you.
It is a mystery. Poetry is a mystery to me. Somebody said, "How did you pick that pen name?" And I said, "Well, I can do whatever I want. I can give myself that name." I gave it to me when I was about 13. Actually, I've been writing poetry just about all my life and won a few awards. The thing is that if you look up what a poet is, if you just look at the raw definition of poet, and you'll find that it's basically somebody who has super abilities to imagine and to express something. And if you eat an orange and you really like it, or if you see somebody you really like, is it all you have to do is say, "I like that orange," or "I like that person"? What else would you like to say about that? Would you like to say, "That was fantastic. I enjoy that person. I enjoy everything about that person"? And I've got to say that I love New York City. I think it's beautiful there. I think there's a lot of poetry there in the city. Of course, there are a lot of poets in the country. And the latest, Amanda Gorman, who read the poetry at the inauguration, she is a poet, and she's beautiful. It's an amazing ability to be able to recite her poetry.
We actually talked. Sorry to interrupt. We actually talked about that poem a couple of weeks ago.
Oh yeah. So she's beautiful and she's wonderful, and she was so good at being able to express deep feelings and thoughts. And I really relished that. I really did. Some of my poetry is it's just about always. I think I've got 5 or 6 books out in poetry, and just about all my poetry revolves around nature and things that I see in nature. But there are a lot of other things that in life that can sort of cause you to think about poetry or to write more, Mr. Wicks and class. What about time and memories? Nature, of course, a breathtaking scene, serenity, love. What about love? What about the human condition, such as where I grew up? I grew up in the coal fields of Appalachia, and rough time, rough life.
Mm.
My father was a coal miner. So hard life, lived in a really old place. I was born in a house, no hospital there. We were raised on a 4,000-foot mountain. And I was born in the back bedroom. There's even a poem about that somewhere. But when you discuss things like the human condition, such as Amanda Gorman, I think I could say that safely. I don't want to tell everybody what she wrote, but I think you can take that and you can amplify on that, and it can become the soul of your poetry. And everybody basically is a poet. Every student that's here listening today really can be a poet, or they are already a poet. They can be whatever they want to be. They can be a doctor and a lawyer at the same time, a doctor, a lawyer, and a poet. They can be all these things. They don't have to be one thing. And certainly in my life, I've done a number of things. I've been a teacher also, Mr. Wicks. I taught chemistry and at the college level, and did a number of things along those lines. So I've had a lot of experience in academia. And now basically I'm a programmer. So I get to use some of my time doing that. And Gage, who has been here and shared some of this nature, was actually helped me catch some butterflies. And I was bragging about the fact that I'd caught 5 or 6 butterflies. He came in and basically said, guess what? I caught about, I think he said 55 butterflies here in Tennessee. So really happy to have Gage along. Glad he asked me to do this. I don't have a whole lot of time. I will take some questions here in a minute. But I want to talk about something, if you don't mind, Mr. Wicks.
Of course.
Very, very, it's probably going to be my next poem. Something's got me. And I feel like I need to write about it. And it's all, I don't know if you can see this.
Had we lived, I think that says, right?
Yeah. It's 3 words, had we lived. And it hit me this week because of a British or an English explorer, Robert Falcon Scott, who was in Antarctica. All of his crew, they went there and things didn't go quite right. Temperature got really cold and they all died. Just before he died, before Captain Scott died, he wrote those words in his diary, and it's been found, and you can read about it if you look up Captain Robert Falcon Scott. And his first line was, or one of these lines was, had we lived, we would have told our story to every Englishman would have been proud of us. Well, think of those 3 words. I have never known anybody to write, had we lived. He knew it was imminent, but that's going to be a poem of mine or a subject that I'm going to write, because it's got me. It's had me for the last couple of weeks and I can't get it out of my head. So folks, if you're going to be a poet, you're going to get some of these things lodged in your brain and you can't get them out. That is one thing for sure. I guess I should take some questions before I keep rambling on.
So, so that might be a good place to start. Okay, if I could start with a question. So what you said there, you know, those 3 words that you read in Scott's diaries, and is that, I was just thinking for some kids who are just starting to write poetry, I'm thinking like how you get inspiration to write a poem. Like, is it always just something like that that sticks in your head, like something that someone has written, or maybe an image, something you see? How do you get the inspiration to write a poem? And also, how does that get turned into the actual product and get developed?
Well, I think we can all probably agree, because everybody that's here today has probably written something, or written poetry or whatever, even short ones like haiku or something. But sometimes you can write something down real quick. I would really urge everybody who writes something down real quick about what they just saw or felt to wait a little bit and look at it again later, because something later will impact what you wrote and it may augment that which you've done. And some of them, what I used to do, in most of the books, I used to keep everything written out or typed out, whatever. And then I would sit out under the trees or something every day for almost a year, as much as I could, and read them every night and add a line or change a line or do something to it, to the point where I got happy with the poetry. And some of them at least one of them that I won the award for at the college, I didn't do it that way. It came very quick and everybody seemed to like it. It's very short. I'll recite it for you now. I watched the years go walking down around the bend, laughing over their shoulders. And when they were nearly out of sight, I closed the gate and listened to the wind. That's it.
Nice. So if anyone has a question, you can unmute yourself, or maybe you can just write it in the chat. Don't be shy. So if anyone has a question, let's do that now, because I don't want to take too much of Mr. Summerfield's time up. I have some questions. I see someone else has just come in. So does anybody have anything they want to ask? Maybe Gage would like to ask a question. Oh, Litza, yes, Litza, go.
Why did you want to be a poet?
Was that where or why? Litza, you said that you wanted to.
Why?
Well, why did you want to be a poet? That's a good question.
Well, that's a really good question. I guess it's because of the fact that sometimes you feel the need to further describe something that you see or feel. You can't just say, that's a beautiful forest. For some reason, I don't know why, I don't guess I can really explain that part, but I do recall, like in one of the poems, I said, in the cinnamon forest. It was in autumn. Well, it smelled like cinnamon. It looked like brown like cinnamon. So I called it the cinnamon forest. I don't know if anybody likes it or not, but that's the way I felt. So thank you for the question.
Michael asks in the chat, how do you get your ideas? Where do you get your ideas from?
That's a very good question. And as we discussed briefly, I think everybody gets a sense, gets a feeling, gets a moment, gets a reaction to an occurrence or something that, as I did with this Antarctica group, Captain Falcon, who wrote Had We Lived, it hit me so hard that I thought that has got to be something I write about. Now, I've written several novels too. Altogether, I think I've written 9 books, but and I'm nothing. I'm a nobody, really. You know, just because you're an author doesn't make you better than anybody else. I'm no better than anybody else. So don't get that feeling. But I hope I answered your question. It's something you get. You got to write it. Maybe it's a condition. I don't know.
For sure. Ralph asks, what inspired you to write poetry or to become a poet? We covered
Well,
that.
along those same lines for sure. And when I was young, I had this. We worked hard. We were in outside working all the time on a farm, and we had a big farm, and it was always, you had to stay with it. And I've often wondered if sitting down and writing helped to allay the pressures of family life or of hard work, or stuff of that nature, you know. I hope that helps.
Bida says, which is a question I was going to ask, who is your favorite poet? For me personally, I've always loved Frank O'Hara. He's a New York poet. So who's your favorite poet, or maybe some of your favorite poets?
Well, I got started early, and maybe I should answer some of those questions by saying that my mother used to recite poetry to me when I was young. And she was going back to the old days, back to John Greenleaf Whittier and Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, and of those. So I've always enjoyed the older types, and I've been accused of working too hard to rhyme some of my poetry. And most poems or feelings nowadays, there is no rhyme. It's that moment. It's that sensation that you get, and you want to put it on paper. So it's not like somebody says, "Let's." But I can tell you, if you really want to rhyme it, to me it adds a little power to it, because a lot of times people, you want to. Sometimes you really want to recite a poem, or at least something somebody said. If it's 27 pages long, you're not going to remember that probably. Oh, there might be a few students who do. I don't know. I never could. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm wandering on.
No, that's fine. Yeah, I know. I agree. I mean, no one's reading like Wordsworth Prelude in the whole length of it these days, I don't think.
Right.
So Melissa asks, have you written any poems about a certain experience that's a good question. That a certain experience has happened in your life. Have you created a poem?
Yeah, for sure. When my mother died, I wrote one of the poems in the book. I think it's in the poetry book called Analemma Days. The poem is it's called Echoes, and it's basically me talking to the hills. Yes.
How old were you when you wrote your first poem? So everyone here, apart from me and you, Mr. Summerfield, are about 13, 14 years old. How old were you when you wrote your first poem?
Yeah, I was 13. I was about 12 or 13 when I wrote the first one. And there were a lot of things in life that when we moved or something had happened, I've lost a lot of them. But you know, if you've written a lot of poetry and then you lose a lot of poetry, you just have to let it go, because you know that's the way life is sometimes.
Sure. And then Ashley, how do you feel when you write your poems? That's an interesting question.
Oh, it's incredible. It is an amazing thing. So that must be part of it. Ashley, was that her name?
Yes, actually,
yeah. So I think that's part of it. And I sometimes, like even now, when I write it, and then later when I read it, and Echoes is one of them that we just discussed. I barely can get through it without crying, or at least tearing up. And it's because the feelings are so forceful. That's for sure. Yeah.
Right, and I guess then you've got a good one, right? When you get that force of emotion. So a lot of
Yes.
questions coming in. I don't know how much time you have, Mr. Butterfield, Mr. Summerfield, excuse me. I don't want to take up too much time, but so Michael asks Gage. This is a question for Gage. Gage, have you ever helped him write a poem? I don't know if Gage, you want to unmute yourself and answer that. Actually, I can do it here. Oh, Gage is having problems with his microphone, so maybe he can't do that. But maybe, but again, Gage has his own question, so maybe, or giving him ideas. Has Gage ever given you any ideas, or any? Or now I hear that Gage, is it your son also writes as well? Is that correct?
Yeah, one of my sons write. I actually have two other. I have 5 children altogether, and another one of my sons is. 2 of them are writing actually, and one of them has a book out, has a novel out, and I don't know if you can see it, Ghost Town or not.
Yeah, we can see that. Yeah.
Okay, that's one of his. But the answer to Gage is yes. I actually, one of the things that really got me when Gage came here to our place in Tennessee several years back when he was younger, when he climbed a tree here, he enjoyed it so much. He just really enjoyed it. I was really so happy to watch him climb that tree. He was truly, really getting up high, and he loved it. That that brought on some writing.
We didn't have very many trees in New York that you can actually climb up.
There were some pretty big trees there in Brooklyn. I don't know how you climb them.
There are. But still, if you tried to do that, someone would call the police. So
yeah, they probably would.
So another question I see is, how many awards do you have? That was from Khalid. How many awards do you have?
I don't know, not many. I did win an award in college many years ago. It was kind of a funny thing. I won first place in one of the poetry contests that was judged, and it was a small amount of money that I won for that poem that I recited a bit ago. It was a $25 check in those days. It was a lot of money, and they made the check out to my pen name. And I couldn't get it cashed. I couldn't prove, I'm not, I might be Xavier Summerfield, the author, but when it comes to legal matters, that name shows on the contracts that I signed for my books, but a little bit hard to get the money out of it. But not that many awards. I mean, one of the things that I don't do is I don't try to push the poetry, Mr. Wicks. It's not me to stand out and try to become something more than what I am. I like being a father, a grandfather, and I love writing, but I'm not out for any fame. I have attained a little bit, but not, if it made me rich, then I wonder why I'm still working full time.
Gage asks, what's your favorite book of poems? I assume that means of your own, maybe rather than someone else's.
Yeah, that really is a good question. Each of them have a different flavor. Anna Lemma Days was devoted to mothers, and particularly my mother. I like that one. My last poetry book was called A Gift of Path, and it's a in-depth look at human spirituality, I think, that type thing, and how nature augments that. But Gage, I think that it's hard to pick one that's favorite. There are poems in each one I like.
Maurizio, you have your hand up. Do you have a question? Maurizio, you have to unmute yourself if you want to ask something. No? Oh, I think, oh, you clicked the wrong thing, no problem. Okay, we're coming up to the half-hour mark here. Does anybody have any other questions they want to ask? I actually, one of my students who's actually here, I won't mention her name, but she wrote a poem, and we actually sent it off to a poetry competition. She's very talented, and I don't know if she's going to win, but it's a very good poem. And I have a lot of students who are very interested in poetry. So this was very useful, I think, for all of us. And thank you so much for doing this, Mr. Summerfield.
You're certainly welcome, and I appreciate the time. And I'll depart now and let you go on with the rest of the class. And don't ever give up. I mean, don't, as all your students, never give up, whatever it is. Just enjoy it and go through life. Enjoy everything. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Mr. Wicks. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right. And thank you, everybody else, for coming. And if anybody has any questions about any of the assignments, please send me a message. You guys had some great questions. And take care. Have a good weekend, everybody. It's beautiful weather. Go outside. Some of you.
Bye, Mr. Wick. Have a good day.
You too. Go outside. I know some of you've been in your bedroom for like.
I'm going to play basketball after.
Yes, go and play. I think it's like 65 degrees or something. Yeah. Go
Last 2 days, I've been able to wear shorts and short sleevers.
Yeah, I see people with shorts on, and I haven't actually been outside today, so yeah, I guess it's that time of year, right? All right, take care, everybody, and thank you again for coming, and enjoy your weekend. This was great. Thanks.
Have a good weekend.
Bye. Have a
Bye,
nice
thank
weekend.
you for
Bye,
giving
guys.
us this opportunity.
Bye, guys. Thank you so much. Thank you.